Chakalaka mofos. Oh my gosh, guys. I'm Alex, part of the Call to Action crew, and I'm here with fantastic people. Here with someone that hasn't really broken down a match in a hot minute. It's Mr. PLD.
True, it's me. It's PLD. I'm happy to be back. I haven't done one of these in a light year, it feels like. Done more other stuff on the channel, but I'm very excited to talk about this match specifically. This was one of my favorite matches of the year.
It's definitely in contention. I'm sure it will be nominated here come award season. That's for dang sure. And here we are with one half of the final exam, a member of Swag, and all around a real delinquent. It's Lon Harris. What's up, Lon?
That's what they call me. I didn't start it. They called me that. Very offensive.
Is that right? No one, someone called you?
Right. It was 100% my idea. That's a complete lie. I came up with the whole thing. I emailed it to Christian and Winston. That was all mine.
To find you like not so much homeless, but just hanging out, like
I really
totally not contemplating movie theory.
My original conception was not him as an unhoused person. And honestly, that's the thing I felt a little weird about all season was like, I don't want it to seem like I'm making fun of people who don't have a place to stay. That's a terrible thing. I feel for those people. I don't want to goof on them. I know that I look like that. I'm aware it's a quarantine thing. Bear with me, everybody. But no, so it was really more about like the professor brought low. Like I'm no longer a professor. I've left that world and now I'm just wandering around on my own. But like a self-imposed exile, not like I don't have a place to stay exile. That was my original thinking. Obviously, people then started making those jokes right away, and I lost control of the narrative. But that was my original plan.
That's kind of how things work when you enter a storyline like that, though. Everybody, you can lose control of the narrative a bit, but got to go with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is just about how people are reacting to you and what they're giving back. I mean, that's part of having a character in something like the Schmoedown is it's interactive. So I kind of have to go where the storyline takes me.
Well, I thank goodness you do, because we were just talking about a little bit about that before the show. This show has transformed a little bit into, there's a lot more trivia powerhouses coming in. So I was finding that balance between the trivia powers and the characters like yourself. I mean, you do a good job of doing both yourself as well, but you don't want to lose the character storyline entertainment value as well. So it's nice to have those still in play, and hopefully we get more of those in the future as well. So
yeah, I mean, that was definitely a thing in the digital era now too, that we were doing this from home. That was a big concern for I think a lot of us who do more character stuff. Is well, how do you bring that into this? So much of it was about entrances and those promos, those things we were filming in the studio, that it's like, well, aren't we going to lose that inevitably? But actually, I think we sort of worked a way around it to where this was one of the best character seasons of all. And I think promos and using video and Zoom and all that kind of stuff, we figured out a way to do it, which was really nice. I was glad.
I definitely think that's the case. And, we are going to be diving into the match here, where we're going to be chatting about some characters, some stats and, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, Megs, isn't here. But, what we're doing here with a Call to Breakdown is that we're going to be breaking down the match. This is going to be so full of spoilers. It's going to be bonkers. So heads up, you have been warned. We are going to be chatting not only the stats of it, we're going to talk over some theories behind the match as well, performances, the future of some of the competitors in the matches, some quick predictions for the upcoming spectacular as well, obviously. So stay tuned for that. All right. So we're going to be diving into our first segment of this match not this match, but the whole thing as well. So we're going to be starting with Match My Stats. And again, Megs isn't here, unfortunately, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up her video real fast. If I can pull it up, that'd be great. And real quick, let me see if I can go ahead and play it. There we go.
There it is. The grid.
The grid is up. Is it playing, Alex? I don't hear the audio. Did you click share my audio?
Oh, you guys don't hear it?
I don't hear the audio right now.
Oh,
so I might have,
you don't? Ooh. Maybe I forgot to press maybe I forgot to hit the audio button.
That's a StreamYard thing. If you forget to share my audio.
Audio button. It was my bad. I'm going to change it. Whoopsie. Wait 1 second. 1 second. All right.
I love that little. This is a
And
very professional show we do.
there we
here, so
go. There we go.
Try again. All right.
Things happen. Things happen. It's all about how we come back from it, right?
Absolutely. Bouncing back. Here we go.
There.
Coming out of round one,
Yes.
the odd couple are up 3 with 18, the final exams 15, with everyone except Oyama, who scored 6, getting perfect rounds plus the bonus. For round 2, final exam turns away from Oscars, landing on Festival Darlings and going 11 out of 12 points, only going to multiple choice on the 5th question. The odd couple answer by taking Viola Davis on their first spin and going perfect, 12 for 12 points, to come out of round 2 up 4, 30 to 26. Both teams wager 2 points on a Ridley Scott betting round question, and both are correct, so there is no change in the point spread with this round. The odd couple has the final exam answer their speed round questions first. Lon misses 1 question, passes on 1, while Oyama goes 5 for 5 in their round for 7 points. And Draco misses 1 question, while Snyder passes on 2, which gives the odd couple 6 points in this round. So final exam is down 3, 35 to 38, going into the championship round. Oyama hits his 2 in scores and soundtracks. Lon hits his 3 in 1990s, bouncing it back to the odd couple, where Snyder hits his 2 in Brad Pitt, and Draco hits his 3 in comic book movies. And it goes back to final exam to hit a 5-pointer in comedy, which forces the odd couple to answer their 5-pointer in fantasy sci-fi to win the match by a new high score record of 48 to 45. The odd couple answered 35 of 36 questions for 97% accuracy and scored 91% of 53 available points, while final exam answered 33 of 36 questions for 92% accuracy and scored 85 of 53 available points. Now, I will make a note that I do not count passing on speed round questions against the accuracy of a team, but the 10 points available in the speed round are taken into account for potential points earned. Now, I am going to jump ahead a little bit and go ahead and give you guys my match thesis, or my big, bold thought concerning this round. So, we didn't know it at first, but round 1 was the final round of this match, because ultimately, the 2 teams scored 30 additional points following round 1. So there was no ultimately change in the point spread between round 1 and the final score. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Talk to you all later.
Oh!
She just stole my theory, my thesis from me. Wow. Okay. Very
Okay, girl. I see you, girl. Oh, what? Okay, so that was okay. That was a lot to kind of dive into. Obviously, we don't need to go into every single itty bitty thing about it, but that is a lot of fantastic information. And so that is Match My Size. Like I said, that is Meg's segment, and so that actually ties in perfectly to our next segment, which is if I can find it, it is going to be Match Thesis. She kind of mentioned that is probably one of the most perfect games we've seen. The only point difference being the first round, and the first round was the huge defining factor in the match with the 2-3 point difference, because there was no numerical change between the first and last round, obviously. Now, starting with Paul, you haven't done it before. Would you like to start by mentioning your match thesis today, or would you like me to promote mine first?
I guess I'll go ahead first. I will say that she actually stole mine. When you told me this idea before this match, I was like, if the first round was the determining round in a way. With that out of the way, I don't want to steal hers or make it copying. I'm going to go and say that I think my match thesis at this point is that Jeff Snyder has proved himself to be the greatest team player of all time. I think that this is one more notch in the belt, the team's record of points that he's been on. He's got the championship now with 2 different teams. Now he's going to Spectacular to potentially have a 3rd team's belt, having played more matches than anybody else in the league at this point. I think he just passed Roke, I believe I saw that correctly. I'm not entirely 100% sure on that, but I thought I read that around somewhere. So this is the potential now gets me that Jeff Snyder is now the greatest team player of all time.
That is a great thesis. It's really kind of frustrating to me a little bit knowing that this is like news to a lot of people. Like, I've always thought that Snyder was by far the best team competitor. No matter like what team he's a part of, I'm like, it's instantly going to be a great team. It's going to be one of the best teams. Like that's something I feel like it's been common knowledge for a while. However, I think having the numbers to prove it is definitely solidifying this idea for a lot of newer fans that aren't super familiar with the Patriots or anything. But this has definitely been a conversation for a long while. And over to Lon, obviously you have I don't want to say you're biased, obviously, but you competed in this match. Do you have a match thesis overall?
I mean, I think when you're talking about matches like this, and I've been in a few at this point where it's back and forth. You can't count on your opponents to miss anything. You have to literally answer every question to even remain competitive. Yes. And I mean, I really think this was that kind of a match. It's the kind of match where it comes down to a single question. It's legitimately anyone's game, and I think at that point it stops coming down to we tend to think of a lot of this as who's got more raw knowledge. Like the person with more raw knowledge is gonna like make it. And I think in this scenario, you really see that it becomes less about that because either side. You don't know one thing, you're done. So it becomes less about that, and it becomes more about things like teamwork, stamina, like being able to remain. Because these matches are long, and to remain that focused for that long is just exhausting. And I mean, I'll point out a few of these moments I think throughout the match, but I think really it becomes that. It becomes an endurance challenge, and it becomes how comfortable you are with the format and all those sorts of things that go into to experience rather than just like which team, because I think all four of the people in this match, there's a drop question here or there, but I don't think you could really fade the trivia knowledge of any of the four people who were competing here. I mean, you can't do this unless you just have that spread of general movie trivia knowledge. Like this, it's not possible to just hit every question, which is what we were doing for most of this match. So I guess that's not a thesis. That's more long-winded than a thesis. But to me, like this is an example of a match that was assumed everybody has incredible trivia knowledge. Now it's about all the intangibles above and beyond that.
As a professor, you're allowed a long-winded thesis, I think. So that's okay by me.
Okay, thank you. I agree.
Paul, your volume was like pretty wonky there for a minute. Did anyone else hear that?
I had to unmute real quick because my dog was barking. My dog was barking in the background. So.
Oh yeah, it's just very loud right now. It's very loud. All right, yeah, absolutely. I like you said. I mean, not for any sport. Especially I think it's really shown, especially in Schmoedown in particular, just because the format is different. It's a longer match. You have to be hyper focused for an extended period of time, like you said, and that making it that much harder. And I think that actually kind of goes into my thesis as well, is that I think this is the best match you've ever played in.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I don't think I mean. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was like, it's not just like, because I know you've had games in the past where you've had perfect or near perfect. But I think being in this match in particular, you really kind of led in the way for round one, round two. I think you really shined in this team match in particular. And you kind of took on a leadership role at a handful of points, which I felt like was very necessary. And there was a handful of questions in that speed round where I was like, yes! Get it, Lon. And so I do feel like overall, maybe, especially, considering, like you said, it's longer, there's more questions asked, there's more knowledge to be had. I do feel like, taking everything into consideration, I do feel like this is the best match you've ever competed in. And it sounds like you could concur, essentially, though, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of things changed about my approach to Showdown this year. Like, I'd never usually I was on teams where we were not prepping, we were just showing up. There was not a lot of strategy. Honestly, for like my whole first season, I didn't even know you could put stuff on the wheel. I would just show up and see what was on the wheel. Like Christian once asked me, like when I first started, she was like, "What are your strengths?" And I was like, like 90s directors, classic stuff like that. And he would just put that on the wheel. Like I wasn't even thinking about specifically what should go on the wheel. And I certainly wasn't thinking strategically about what could I put on there, that like what could I specialize in, or what could I put on there to cause other people to stumble, or thinking about whatever, nothing like that. So Paul Oyama this year, working with him really, and Winston and Swag, just thinking about that holistically is totally new for me this season. And also training. I mean, I've been, like hanging out with Showdown people and actually prepping occasionally, and like I wouldn't say studying, but like
you're hanging out answering questions,
right. And,
like every time I hung out with you, questions are being asked.
Right, a lot more of those kinds of hangouts, and just like watching movies in a more focused way, where now I know I'm going to be maybe competing and being asked questions about them, so I'm paying attention to things like composers that I wasn't before, or I'm trying to notice background things like what place, what's the name of this sanitarium where they're being held, in case I get asked about that. So I mean, all those sorts of things I think combine to just make me better at the game this year than I've been in years past. And I think that culminated in this team's tournament, this final exam run, and then this match in particular, where we were at such a high, trying to compete at such a high level against, I think, easily one of the best teams to ever play in.
Absolutely.
Well, this actually brings up, I think it's a good turning point real quick, what we were talking about beforehand, before we went live. You mentioned how this was your second 5-round match or whatever, and you talked about how your first 5-round match that you had been thrust into was a totally different scenario.
It was, I believe it was the Harris brothers versus Who's the Boss, and it would have been the team's tournament final, I want to say 2 seasons ago, I believe. Yes, I did. That was my very first finals or championship match, and I did not know. And I put this on myself that I was not doing the research and the background. But Jonathan, my brother, and I showed up and had no idea that it was this extended format. And we're as it was the one time in my Schmoedown history that as Mark Ellis is going over the rules during the broadcast, I'm like paying close attention. Like, what? Okay, what happens if I pass? I hang on. I had to like focus on it because I really didn't know those bonus. I didn't know what was involved. I was used to a standard 3-rounder. So this time I felt more comfortable with the format. I knew what was coming. And I was, sort of more prepped for it. And I mean, Winston, we worked out, all sorts of strategies and thoughts on how every round was going to go. And like that was hugely different in terms of prep.
And you're also going up against not going up against a competitor, but you are literally in a match with champions, obviously. And Draco.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Before this was Merle Roca, which was like
exactly. It's really you've been competing exclusively champions for this entire tournament, I feel like.
Pretty much.
And that's such a rare situation. Roca, Merle, and Draco, Snyder, and your teammate is Oyama, who's also a former singles champion himself.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a weird situation, per se, that not a lot of people are in. So obviously going into this match, you were significantly more prepped. Having Oyama, as your teammate is a huge benefit as well. Because he is very much a strategic kind of competitor. I know you've mentioned where there's been times where you're like, oh, I was thinking these could be like potential weaknesses of theirs, and he's come to you. Or strengths, and he's come to you and be like, actually, according to my binder of notes,
he's just one of those guys. There are a few people in the league who are like this. It's not
Yeah.
just Oyama, but he's one of the
Absolutely.
leading ones. Where they can,
Mhm.
it's like scripture. They can like cite chapter and verse at will. Where you'll be like,
It's crazy.
"Oh, I wonder if Chance knows a lot about X," and he'll be like, "Well, in this match against this team, he answered these 3, and he got those 2 wrong, but he got this one." And you're just like, "How is he doing this?" I mean, it's
Casual
his knowledge
knowledge.
of the Schmoedown is equal to his knowledge of movies, which is crazy to me.
But just you wait. He probably doesn't realize that Neptune is a planet. You know,
It's just like when you hear like it's like when you watch like a Sherlock or something where you're like he knows it's like random fact, but does he know the Pluto hasn't been technically a planet in so many years?
I don't know.
Something
I wouldn't
like
want to put
that.
too much past that guy. I've got like Chandru, who's like a rocket scientist when he's not answering movie trivia questions. So like, I don't know. if
I hear that. It's
necessarily
crazy. It's nuts to me. Yeah, I remember having that. I remember having a conversation. I don't remember what Schmoedown competitor it was, but they didn't realize that Benjamin Franklin wasn't the president. And I was like,
That's a common misconception.
no, absolutely. But I was like,
think
you know
that.
what? It's actually, and I'm like, you know what? Kind of makes sense because they're like, yeah, I never really thought about it, you know, not being his group off or anything. And I was like, you know what? They're totally on a cash bill. I can see the associate. I can see the association in the assumption of no one corrects you, and they're always in the company. Anyway, but you guys, we got to get back to our match. We got to start breaking down this match because this is a big moment. This is the kahuna. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take down this real quickly, and all right. And like I said, we're going to be skipping through the promos and all that good stuff. So just want to give you guys a heads up, you know.
Ugh, who needs to hear that Ellis guy? Jeez.
You've heard him say the rules once. You've heard him say it a million times.
Yeah, we're skipping through the promos, all that good stuff, because otherwise we'd be here literally for over an hour and a half. So we're going to skip through all that good stuff and just kind of hang out and watch a little bit.
Although you shouldn't, if you're watching home, you shouldn't because there was a great Andrew Guy scene in the beginning.
Oh,
it's
hilarious.
If you want to follow the story, you got to watch the Andrew Guy stuff.
Oh my gosh! Oh, that was my big Schmoedown fan fiction from last week. my Showdown fan fiction that I made, that's the segment of our breakdown, is my fan fiction from last week when we did a breakdown, is that Andrew Guy is going to create a Schmoeminati faction where he's a manager or an advisor.
Oh,
coming to you hot.
I like it.
Definitely some surprises coming.
Want to come on screen for a hot minute?
They've all seen this shirt.
It would be great if they saw it again.
I don't think you shared your audio, Alex.
Oh, gosh darn it again.
I think you did.
Shnikes, I swear. Oh, gosh. I'm so sorry, y'all.
It's okay.
There we go.
It's only a
okay, so I also saw the Tad distracted as well because my husband just walked in with his Gucci shirt.
The Gucci shirt.
It's his Denzel Washington shirt, pink one, and I was like,
"Oh, that's a true Schmoedown icon right there."
Yeah, it is a Schmoedown icon. Them in the shorts, you know.
I'm still not hearing it, by the way. I'm still not hearing the match, Alex.
Yeah, I still don't hear anything. I mean, we could just.
You're not supposed to. Let's say we're not supposed to. Like.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's like sometimes we have it on low, but we're gonna be chatting through the match itself. So we're gonna be.
I mean, honestly, this ended up being the sort of some of the crew, like this and the speed round really determined the entire match. I think everything else was just sort of almost exactly even back and forth. It was really, and I don't mean to put it on anyone in particular. I mean, you know, anybody can have a sort of a brain fart moment and miss something here or there. But I was really surprised. I wasn't as surprised. A lot of people were saying that Wizard of Oz, they were shocked Paul would miss that one. But I think that's an easy enough mistake to make in the heat of the moment because they are silver slippers in the book. It's also a famous image. I could totally see transposing it if you hadn't seen Wizard of Oz recently. I was surprised that Paul missed Prince of Thieves. I thought for sure because they gave you the Robin Hood part.
Right.
Like
There's a lot of different Robin Hood.
The character, which is sort of a giveaway, just saying what Robin Hood film. I mean, there really aren't that many from that era that would reasonably star those actors. I feel like it's only Prince of Thieves versus Men in Tights.
Pretty much at that point. That's true.
And I love Men in Tights so much. While we're kind of hanging out.
I'm just saying, like the Russell Crowe one obviously would be too late for those actors to be in those roles. There really, the Disney one is too early. There really aren't that many famous Robin Hood movies. So I felt like, to me, you'd get to Prince of Thieves pretty quickly. And you know, Paul obviously not as up on his 90s films as yours truly, but still no slacker on it. So that one did surprise.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising.
Already,
I do think
he regains and he doesn't miss anything else, basically.
Well, that's the important part. I think that's the important part to bring up, is the fact that he did struggle a little bit in round one. He had those 2 misses while everyone else remained perfect. He could have folded, but he came back in round 2 and was same old Paul Oyama.
I'd argue, honestly.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I
honestly.
Let's let Lon. Go ahead, Lon. Go ahead,
I'm
Lon.
not going to talk for a minute.
Go ahead, Lon.
No, go ahead, Lon, please.
Okay, I was going to say that's the first example of what I was talking about in my thesis, where less about knowing or not knowing. I believe if you got Paul on a different day, he would get Ruby Slippers, he would get Prince of Thieves. It's less about whether he knows or doesn't know the question. It's more about the mental ability to regain composure after missing 2 early on, answer the rest correctly, not miss anything for the rest of the round, the match. I mean, I think like that's what you need to have in order to compete in the Schmoedown at this level. You just assume we're all going to get most of the answers right. And it's who can stick with it in the moment and not lose their. But like, I now fully admit, I don't always, keep. There have been times where I sort of go on tilt and you miss things that you could have otherwise gotten, and that's really what I think this kind of a match comes down to at the end.
I do think that these are all great questions. And, you know, I was kind of thrown for a loop. There's a handful. I was like, this is arguably a little tad harder. But, you know, I'm all excited about these questions. These are really fantastic questions. And it's so rare that you actually come to, for a match to really come down to points in the first round to make the big point difference to really determine the winner of a match. Very rarely does that happen, if ever. I also kind of want to mention... Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
a rare example of in the final round, both teams get all 3. Like almost every match I've been in, especially when they're very close like this, it gets decided by that final. Like somebody misses their 3, somebody misses their 5. Like you think, and I assumed for the whole match that that's what it was going to be. I was like, either they're going to hit their 5 and we're not, or we're going to hit our 5 and they're not, and that's what it's going to come down. Like I firmly believed that this was going to be who gets their 5-pointer right wins the match. And then we both, like, it's just like, so it's crazy. Like, like when you're competing at that level, it really is like 1 or 2 little mistakes, whenever they happen, that's it.
Right. Especially on that, and the 5-round matches, the fifth round in this case, Jamie, are usually the much harder material. And so usually some kind of miss somewhere, but you guys didn't miss a beat on either of them. So
I do think that there are, what kind of separates a good competitor from a great competitor, because obviously going into Schmoedown, you're not going to be in Schmoedown unless you have some core, level of movie knowledge and, all that good stuff, obviously. But what separates, anyone could be a really good Schmoedown competitor. But in order to be a great competitor, you got to learn to be able to recover mentally, psychologically when it comes to in the middle of a match and to be able to recuperate. And I think Paul Oyama just really, really proved that he is one of the really great competitors out there. And I do think there's in order to do that, and he came back and he's coming back into it so great into throughout this match as well, working together part of a team in the speed round, 3rd round. I was really, really impressed. But also, I do think that's one of the reasons why, not a thesis, but another gut inkling is that James White, I honestly think he's going to be a great competitor. Because do you not remember that match in the singles tournament? He came back from 4 to 17 in the 2nd and 3rd round. It was fantastic. And I think that's why he's going to be a great competitor one day.
You'll see it too, I believe, in the final round of this. You can actually see Andreyko start to like kind of lose focus a little and get upset, about something, but immediately pull it back, refocus, and that it is surprisingly important, especially in a long, drawn out match like this one, where we're still on round 1 here, so like there's a lot of trivia to be answered. It's really like an entire night of bar trivia, but yourself, and there's no drinking, and it's all in a row with no breaks.
Yeah. It's a psychological battle as much it is about the knowledge. Real quickly, I do want to highlight some things in the chat. You did get a super chat recently from Mr. Ben Rayner, a rock star up in these parts. Thank you so much, Mr. Rayner. Hi guys, this was an incredible match. Everyone played great on both teams. Spectacular is going to be great, and can't wait to see what comes next for final exam. Okay. We also got, quite a
I'm also excited to find out what's coming next for final exam.
There's so many great teams, competitors, and everything, and like manager competitor matchups that I will be legitimately heartbroken if some teams, really great teams, or whatever it might be, have to separate. Like if you
teams do, because it's going to happen, because you don't have 3 players. I mean, Swag is a stacked.
Exactly.
Right now.
I don't envy Winston's decision, and I can't spoil anything because I legitimately don't know what's going on. Like I have talked to him, but he's not telling me what he's deciding. So
I've chat with I remember chatting with some managers. I'm not asking them for spoilers or anything, but I was just chatting with them, and they were just saying, it comes down to also hoping someone is going to be available to trade. Other managers are going to really be open to trade, because it comes down just strategically and like looking at the records and everything and being realistic about, it's not so much like Video Drew, for example. Like it's clear her record does not reflect her knowledge. That does not reflect how great she is, how much she contributes to the team. And I think other managers are kind of making note of that.
I mean, she's competed a lot less than me this season, but I think a lot of people have improved the same way that I did, but it hasn't been showcased as much. I just happened to get on this team that went on a couple hot streaks and got a lot of chances to be on camera answering trivia questions real good. And so people kind of know what level we're competing on. I think Drew is a great example of somebody who's taken a comparable path of getting really, really good at this game, but we've only had a few rare opportunities for her to showcase it, including this really incredible undercard match against Jen Kemp, which, I don't think necessarily a lot of fans have maybe seen, but which is an amazing showcase for how far she's come. So I totally agree. There's a lot of those kinds of deadly threats. I also think last year on draft day, a lot of things were figured out on draft day. Like I wasn't in communication with anybody. I literally didn't know. I wasn't able to make it to the draft last year. So I literally didn't know where I was going to end up until I got a text from Winston that was like, "Hey brother, I drafted you. What's up? Bet we're going to meet next week." Or something. Like it was, that was me finding out for the first time that I was on Swag. This season, my sense of it, just from my perspective, I haven't talked to everybody, that's rarer. And more of the regular players you're used to seeing compete are having a lot of conversations right now with everybody about where everybody is going to land. And so I think it's going to be a lot, there's going to be some fascinating shakeups, and it's going to be a lot of stuff that was in motion for a month as opposed to like shocker draft day. Yeah. Oh my God, the wild berries are splitting up kind of situation.
Right.
Because we have will be a few of those.
No, definitely we have that free agency coming up. Like for example, the biggest one out there right now is that Ben Bateman has publicly said he's not playing with Gucci. So there's one player who's a top level player who is free game to sign, and he's not going to make it to the draft, obviously, I would think.
I honestly think that Roka would also be in that conversation as well, to be honest. And or Dan Murrell.
I think about everybody is part of these conversations. Like I don't think the idea of a faction holistically trying to stick together beyond a few people in clusters is really going to be part of the conversation. I think we're going to see wild swings between this season and next season in terms of who's on what faction based on a lot of the back and forth that's going on in the league right now.
Well, you'd be
Both
silly
I'm
to
ready
not
to and
talk
I'm
about
not.
it, right? I mean, you'd be silly if you're a player at any faction. You'd be silly not to listen to somebody else's offer, right? I mean, you want to keep your options open.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are taking that approach, whereas I didn't necessarily see that coming. I thought a lot of people would take the well, I'd like to stick to my faction unless barring some major unforeseen thing. But I think the uncertainty of every manager only getting to keep 3 people and almost every roster having more than 3 quality players who managers would want has led to a situation where everybody's kind of talking to everybody and seeing where they stand and what could be. And so, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a ton of consistency necessarily between this season and next season in terms of rosters. Definitely more than 2 or 3 people deep.
Yeah, there's no guarantees going into next season. That's for dang sure. Weston Iris mentioned founding fathers. I assume that's what he means by, FF and Bateman are leaving for sure. I also just want to say hi to everyone over in the chat specifically. We haven't really dedicated time to chat with you. John Pierce, for example. Western Arrow, the Prince That Wasn't Promised. Jake, obviously, a lot of really awesome people. So I just want to say hello to you guys. Now, real quickly, we are going to be moving into the next segment of our whole shindig, which is, the spin is in. And real quickly, in this segment, we are going to be making guesstimates, essentially, on what we think. I'll pause it, of what we think was put on the wheel by both teams. Now, Alon is not going to be, telling us what they put on the wheel, what their strengths and weaknesses and all that good stuff are. Yeah, we don't want you to. But, as fans, it's always fun to kind of guess and, kind of, like I said, guesstimate as far as what we think were put on the wheel by these competitors and just bring it down. Now, Paul, I have, like I said, I have kind of seen this. I haven't, I've done this before, so I'll kind of lead by example in this case. I think that Final Exam put down YA adaptations and Pixar. And I say that because those are big strengths I know of Oyama. Oyama is a big strength of his. And Pixar, that's something that I think Oyama is really good at, and I've heard Lon do really, really well at Pixar and animated in general. So I feel like that'd be a really good combination. Paul, what do you think?
I would agree. I'm agreeing on the Pixar part, I think, for sure, because obviously that's definitely a weakness, I think, of Snyder, for example. And I don't know how much of it is for Mark, but I do think that Paul and Lon definitely know their Pixar enough to put it on the wheel. The second one, I'm not quite sure of. The young adult novel adaptations is one I definitely consider as a possibility.
He's put on the wheel before.
2 other ones that throw me in there, Festival Darlings. I know both Paul and Lon have had some strengths with Festival Darlings previously. They got to see those we're outside.
We're focusing specifically on Final Exam, not.
No. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying Paul and Lon.
Okay. My bad.
I think they both have knowledge outside of what I'd consider the norm of the mainstream movies. That and Lon has actually mentioned that before recently, where he knows things that are not necessarily in the mainstream as well. So I want to lean towards that as well. The other one I kind of want to throw out there as a potential would be that period costume drama. I feel like that's a strategic Paul Oyama play. I feel like that's a strategic play by Paul Oyama that it's not a well-loved category, not well-known enough category that he would take that, study at hardcore, let Lon know what's going on, and Lon would be open to that idea, and that's what he would go. So I'm going to go with the period costume drama as the second one, but I agree with Pixar on the first one as well.
I won't reveal anything, but I will say all 4 of the categories that you've identified at various points during this season, we put all 4 of those on the wheel. I won't say what we did for this match.
Well, you know what? Okay.
We've chosen 4 wheel slices.
Well, good for you and I. Fist bump.
Yeah.
Good. Well done, you and I.
Again, this match aside, Pixar in particular is definitely something that early on in the season, both Paul and I figured out is a shared strength.
Yes.
So we were if we ever need to know what are things we both feel very comfortable with, because I'm actually not that great. Just animated as a category is very broad. You can get questions from errors in my life when I was not watching a lot of animated movies, and it could be a real problem for me. I've missed a few of those. Like I think I missed a Rango question at one point. I've missed a Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball questions at one point. Like there's that gap that I don't necessarily have. But but not Pixar. I'm pretty good because that's all been in my, like, when I was reviewing things or writing about movies for most of the Pixar era. So I've had to see a lot of those. Like, even if I didn't necessarily care about Good Dinosaur, like, well, I had to check it out anyway.
Right. It makes sense to me. Well, that's definitely a good point. Oh, Alex got disconnected. Oh, she got disconnected, and I don't even have the wheel, so we have to start over. Look at this. Technology is grand, isn't it? I'll find the match, and I will put the banner up. Give me 1 second. Oh, she's back. Woo.
I don't know what happened, yo. I have no clue. It's funky. Anyway, sorry about that. I will see if I can, unless you already have the thing pulled up, I can bring it back up again.
No, it's still you had it pulled up. So when you went down, it all crashed out.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. That's really funky. My computer might need an update or something here pretty soon. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and pick up where we left off. Now so thank you so much for your assessment of our, wheel picks. And I'm glad, we were kind of smart about picks. And now real quickly before we get started, picking up back where we left off, is that I do want to go into The Odd Couple in that case. Now, what were some, starting with you, Lon, going as a competitor, what were some, looking at this slice, what were you kind of thinking were potential strengths on the wheel that they picked?
Well, one thing early on that we had discussed when we were first starting about going up against these two guys, and Jeff Snyder in particular, is that he's going to be very strong on recent movies. He spent the last decade professionally seeing everything, writing about everything, interviewing people about everything that comes out. So you always want to, I think, when you're going up against a guy like that, Viviani would be another good example. If there's anybody who's in that world, Whitney, Alonzo, you want to, I think, dodge stuff like new releases. So when we saw stuff like new releases, 2010s up there, I think that's always something that jumps to mind. Is like, well, Jeff Snyder's going to be an encyclopedia of that stuff. He's seen all of those movies because he's writing about them from early pre-production casting rumors all the way through. That he's not going to have missed one of those movies. And actually, I won't say whether or not we put it on the wheel this time, but this was also something we discussed in terms of YA movies. Like, those are pretty recent movies. A person who's a film reviewer or entertainment reporter in 2020 has probably seen or written about your Maze Runners, your Divergences, your all of that, all of those franchises, Twilight, Hunger Games.
Right.
So also kind of dangerous. So I wouldn't be surprised if I found out that those were those guys. I do also think that there's a chance, considering not only how well they did, but how quickly they decided to go with it, that Viola Davis might have been a pick of theirs, a strategic pick.
Well, I'm going to say something real quick. I'm going to confirm that. Jeff Snyder was actually on a reaction with one of our Action Army generals, Brandon Buckingham and Jeff Holterman, and he actually confirmed that he had put Viola Davis on for a couple times in a row now.
When it came up on the wheel, you could just see, even though they went back and forth and gave us the little formality of like, what do you think? Should we keep it? Should we get? I felt like I saw across their faces that they were very happy to get this, which made me immediately in the moment. And honestly, I think that's a good strategy. I've talked about this before. I think specializing in an actor, because actor categories can be surprisingly difficult because they give you that false sense of confidence. When you get Viola Davis in your head, you can go, "Oh, I know Widows. I know Suicide Squad. I know The Help. I've seen Fences. I'm going to nail this." And you forget that, like, well, you're talking about an actor who's got a 15, 20-year career, popped up in a lot of supporting roles, probably starred in stuff before you were aware of who she was, and she was just another face that would blend into an ensemble, but now she's very famous. And, like, the classic example for me of this is Jodie Foster, which I think is like, that's a killer category. She's been acting for like 50 years. It goes back to like the 60s. You'd be crazy. So that also does strike me as like, if you purposefully went back and like, I'm going to review the last 15 or so years of Viola Davis movies, it's a good way to sort of honeypot trap your opponents too, and sort of end up being more prepared than them. So yeah, that does not surprise me at all that Viola Davis was put up there by them, and they got lucky and pulled it on a spin. Good for them. And then
I also feel like that this is like a newer category as well. A lot of times with the newer categories, the first questions out of the chute, so to speak, are more of the surface level type ones that you know.
Honestly,
Not always.
I didn't see them until this match went up. Obviously, I was pulled aside in a separate room during the match, but I thought a few of those Viola Davis questions were actually pretty challenging. Like, fences, I knew right off that was the Oscar. Well, we'll go through them. We'll see them individually. But there were a few that I might have had to go to multiple on. I think I would have had a harder time with that category than with our category.
Okay.
I do think that this is I don't want to say any wheel is biased, although Megs could say otherwise. I do feel like this wheel was kind of in their favor a little bit. Like you said, recent releases, festival darlings, Matt and Ben, for example, Viola Davis, and
we did not put that one up there. I'll tell you that. But
that's a Snyder category.
Yeah, maybe. But that one's not too scary for me because it's really only like late 90s. I feel like I've got a pretty good handle, and I don't know if there's a lot. They were famous right off. Like, that's the thing about those guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few Ben Affleck performances from before they were like well-known dudes, but it's not much. Like, they got famous early in their career, so there's not a lot of those sleepers that are going to be waiting, hiding, and wait for you. You just have to know the Jersey Girls of the world, the Geelys or whatever. But he was already a well-known guy by then. It's the Jodie Foster stuff. It's like the little girl who lives down the lane is the example I always give, which is a classic 70s movie.
Freaky Friday? You mean that's not like a mega famous movie, Freaky Friday?
But that is one of the more famous ones. Like, for every one of those,
Bugsy Malone
is something that not a ton of people are going to know that is hiding and wait for you. Or even something that was really well known in its day that is more obscure now, like The Accused. I've seen a question come up, which was a big movie when it came out, but not revisited often in modern film nerd circles.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that.
Yeah.
We know Viola Davis, Alex. So who do you think the other wheel choice was from?
I would have to say new releases. Like you said, new releases or festival darlings. And I feel like festival darlings, they really kind of go hand in hand because new releases, like you said, Snyder, he's a film critic. He's going to movie festivals. He's very vocal about, going to press releases and screeners and all that good stuff. And but also Ann Draco, he's mentioned when theaters are around, he would go to a movie theater like twice a week, and or go with a lot of friends that are in the industry, and he would go to screeners as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that they're both mega strong in, as well as festival darling. So they really go hand in hand. But
I would be surprised by festival darling only because, like, if I was in their shoes, there's no way I would give us festival darlings because we've consistently won matches. I mean, especially if you went to like the Tom and Paul match early on in this tournament. I mean, those guys are a great team. We just happened to get this category that we're very good at. Like, that was the key to that victory. So I feel like if you saw that match, you'd probably be like, we should not put, like, when I saw Festival Darlings up there, I won't say whether we put it up there or not, but like, that's one of the ones that I'm looking at like, oh, I hope we hit that. Like, we spun off of Oscars, as you're about to see once we play the video.
Right.
Not so much because I'm terrified of Oscars. I'm okay. It's more because there were a bunch of things on there that I thought potentially we would do even better at Oscars. And Festival Darlings is one of those.
So I would pick for my second one for, I believe that Jeff said that he put on Viola Davis. I don't know if that meant that Mark put on something specific or if they came up with it together. I wouldn't be surprised. I know I said it for Final Exam as well. I also wouldn't be surprised if period costume dramas was a Mark Andreyko thing as well. I think he was a good one. He might take that risk that he knows that more than they do potentially. But
that's a category that really that one kind of scares me. There's courtroom dramas too.
I love that category.
No, I love those kinds of movies.
That's my category.
It scares me not because I don't like courtroom movies or period. Like I really like historical and costume dramas. It's just so broad and it goes all the way back. Like both of those genres.
It's a very hard category.
You could pull 30s movies from both of those genres if you wanted to. Now, I don't think PJ would do that 6 in a row or whatever, but like, there's no range. There's no like, okay, I can batch this off and prep for it. You're at the mercy of the question writers, and it's like, sure, you probably remember, like the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice pretty well. Maybe even you can get to the Reese Witherspoon Vanity Fair pretty well, but like, how far back do you go? If there's questions about, Robert Downey Jr. and Restoration, are you up on that? We go back to like Barry Lyndon, like in that era,
right.
Like you could really take your pick. There's so many of those movies, so I think that's a little scary. But you may be right. It's also a scary thing to potentially throw at your opponent, and they may have been counting on if we spun it, we're going to miss a few, and they're going to pick up those steals.
That's my initial thought. Where I could be wrong, but that's where
it's not a terrible theory. I will also one other slight I'll comment on before we move on. Ridley Scott would normally be a real slice. I'd be like, oh, maybe we'll hit Ridley Scott. I know his movies pretty well, but I once saw JTE spin Ridley Scott and get hit with what I think are some of the most difficult questions I've ever seen in the Schmoedown. The one that I remember was, what animal is featured on the signets on Maximus's armor in Gladiator?
A horse, a stallion.
It's a horse,
yes.
But you have to get to like 3 levels. You have to remember that he raises horses because he's got that one scene where he's like, "I have a steed like this at home," whatever. Like,
it's a whole conversation.
Put that whole thing together like that. Come on, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's 100% a 5-pointer right there. And I think when it comes to very specific categories, whether it be actors or directors, I said it before and I say it again, those are very sleeper killers. Because in theory, you can be like, it's a finite number compared to something like costume dramas, which theoretically is not just costume dramas. It includes a lot of war movies and just period films in general, historical films. But really, Scott, since it is a finite number, it's really, really difficult because they usually are harder digs rather than surface level questions. Like if you're getting a costume drama movie, it would be like, who directed 2015's Anna Karenina starring Keira Knightley?
Right.
I feel like that's a 2-pointer. That's a 100% a 2-pointer. And it's Joe Ray, 100%. But I digress. But that's 100% a 2-pointer because it's a very surface level question, but it's not a category people really go for versus Ridley Scott, which is like what year this Kingdom of Heaven released in theaters or something. Regardless, we are going to be going into our next round. You're going to continue in, this round, which is, obviously the wheel round in particular. And now you guys have a 3-point deficit going into this round. Obviously, you as well as both members of the Odd Couple, obviously getting perfect, including the bonus questions, which is amazing. How did you guys feel about feeling like you had to, make up for those lost points in the first round going into this next one, Lon?
I gotta be honest. At this point, I did not think that the whole match was going to come down to a few points. I figured one team would sort of pull away. As soon as we got Festival Darlings, I felt pretty good about that. I think that's a category in which we're pretty competitive, and I really felt like we were going to make these points up in this round, maybe in the next round. And again, the whole match, I just sort of assumed we're really just keeping pace until that last round. And this will come down to who gets their 3 and their 5-pointers. Like for most of these matches, that's just my baseline assumption because, everybody's good. Everybody knows their stuff. It's not going to be somebody who just messes up and biffs around, that's probably not going to happen. So it's going to come down to a few points. So I at this point, I wasn't really stressing the few point deficit. I got to be honest, I wasn't really even paying that much attention to the score at this point. I knew we dropped a few against them and we were down, but I'm not constantly checking like how close we're getting. Or I know Paul is more like that, but I'm really just trying to focus on hitting the next question.
That's
Absolutely.
What I do with Festival Darlings, I was just clearing my mind of everything but like Sundance movies and trying to like figure out, like where they're going and give myself as much time as I can. This is a good example. I like Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene a lot, and I like the actor John Hawkes a lot. But sometimes, like right in the moment, it doesn't come to you right away, and you can see in my face that I'm like struggling to place him, and Paul just had it immediately. So like I might have gotten there by the end of I believe I would have gotten to John Hawkes if given the full amount of time to answer the question. But that's the stuff I'm trying to focus on rather than worrying about where we are in terms of the score, is like pulling a name like John Hawkes that's not necessarily on the tip of my tongue.
It's a hard name. I feel like he's definitely one of those character actors that you recognize him, where he's like,
Right.
You're that one guy. He's like Tony Shalhoub a little bit. You're like, you've been in a million
Right.
one things, but when you be seeing in person, you're like, what's your name?
Yes, he's in that
Yeah.
range where you maybe don't talk about them all the time, but you know them from several films. A great character actor. So anyway, that's a great that's one of those occasions I'm really glad to have Paul as a partner, because he's going to pull stuff like that I can't necessarily get to. Scott Hicks being another good example of, I knew it, and you could see as soon as we went to multiple and I saw all four names, I was like, oh, it's definitely Scott Hicks. Like, and he is Australian. I was right when I was like, it's definitely someone Australian. But sometimes you just can't quite get to the name in time, and you've got to, go to multiple. So
Just right there on the tip of your tongue.
I knew it, but that one point wouldn't have ultimately made.
Now, I do want to clarify, you guys played fantastic. You guys ran through that so perfect. Obviously, it was, across the board, it was perfect. Now, watching these guys play, are you kind of watching them play a little bit? Obviously you and Paul are a rookie team, you're a baby team, and I think you guys should. I wonder if there's like a rookie team of the year, because I think you guys would totally get that award, come award season. How do you guys feel like how you guys competed as a team compared to like a veteran team like The Odd Couple, like as a unit?
I mean, I think Paul and I we work really well together. I think that's been the secret to our success for most of this season. I mean, I got better at the game, obviously, and Paul's amazing at it, but I do think, we have a good give and take, and we developed over time a pretty good shorthand in terms of like, I can tell when he really knows something versus when he's got to get. We both got very good at that. How certain are you of the answer? Let's talk it out. And I think that's the kind of thing that the best teams do. I think teams, I won't single anyone out. I think teams you can see throughout the tournament and even throughout the season struggled a little were the ones that didn't necessarily have a very easy give and take, where they both have ideas or both have guesses, and then it's just like, well, which guess do we go to? And there's sort of whereas with Paul and I, it was always very easy. It was always like, here's what I think, and then he would be like, well, I think it's this, and I'd be like, oh no, you're right. Like, you can see there's a few examples through the tournament of like I like the Sister Act steal that we had, I believe, in the last match against Founding Fathers, where he guessed I believe Los Angeles, and then I came over top and was like, I actually think it's San Francisco, and we were just able to very quickly read Lon's like 30% more certain of his answer than Paul is of his. We should go with Lon, and like those are the kinds of things that are unspoken, and it's hard to. You only got a little bit of time to sort of make this decision. Right. And I think that if you watch Mark and Jeff, it's exactly the same. They have that same easy give and take where either they both know it right away, it's obvious, but when there is disagreement, they very easily arrive at a consensus decision. And that's not easy to do. You have to have a partner that you interact with well and have easy communication with to do something like that in this narrow amount of time. I think actually there's an example of a question that comes up where they actually have different answers, But they very quickly decide, oh, you know what? No, Jeff's is the right answer. We got to get
it's the validated, it's the night and day question, I believe is what you're talking about.
The night and day question, exactly. And it's like both answers are reasonable. Like those are both government, those movies that would have government operatives, would have official kind of people in them. And it's just a matter of Mark having that trust in Jeff expressing through his voice and his body language very quickly his level of certainty, and both of them being able to come together in the moment and make that snap decision. We're going with night and day, which is of course the right answer, and
having the confidence in your own answers as well, so that when you are that 30% more confident, you don't like have that. You go, no, I'm pretty like it kind of gives that as well.
And that's the chemistry that I think a top team has to have. And again, I think almost like all the teams have a good give and take. There's just, you've got to get to that level where it's almost unspoken. And that's there are a lot of compelling reasons to break up teams next season, not just Final Exam, but like all sorts of teams. But I feel like that's the intangible thing that you can't really know. It's always a risk to try to do a new team, even if they're two superstar players as individuals, because you don't know until you do a match or two if you're going to have that in the moment chemistry, or if it's maybe going to be clashing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that it just comes down to
so Mark goes to Lions, which is a very good guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When he said it.
When he said it, I was like, maybe.
The same thing. I was like, is it maybe? I thought it was Nathan.
Yeah, okay. This is one of the ones that I don't, maybe Paul would have gotten this. I don't think I would have gotten this. I think I probably would have gone with Lions for Lambs as well.
And it's would be a totally valid guess at that point, I think. So
yeah, or something else even. Like, Night and Day is not a movie that springs immediately to, I've seen it, but it's not a movie that springs immediately to my mind.
Being a rom-com girl, I thought of that movie right away more than that because I don't know dramas very well. Like, so Lions for Lambs, I would have been like, I don't know what that is. I mean, that sounds right. I don't know.
I was talking about this backstage the other day with Mr. Bateman himself. I think this is a great example of how the way that we, both competitors and fans, sometimes talk about questions. I think it's a little bit, there seem to be all of these discussions that are about objectively saying like, well, this is a 2-pointer and this is a 5-pointer. This is a very hard question. And this is a very easy question. I think obviously you can make generalizations, but I think the more specific you get, those divisions kind of break down, because it's all so much about your perspective, like your age, your gender, your tastes, your favorite genres, your life experience, the community that you come from. Like, there's so many things that can influence what movies you're familiar with and you've seen regularly versus movies that you're a little bit shakier on. And this is a great example of you're a bigger fan of genre that Night and Day comes from than me. So to you, a Night and Day question is easy, whereas to me, it's like, whereas I'm a bigger fan of the genre Lions for Lambs comes from, and I'd be more comfortable with a question about that. So it's not that one is easier than the other.
Absolutely.
It's that you have an easier time with one than I do, and vice versa.
Exactly. It's like I said, if you grew up on dramas or something like that, me growing up with rom-coms, my mind quickly went to that. So you know, it's just it's a lot of factors involved. Some other teams that from the chat that are highlighted from great teams with chemistry, you know, not just you guys, obviously, you know, Shazam, Drew and Tom. I don't 100%. Agree.
And I mean, Drew and Tom is a great example of two people who were friends and knew each other in real life. And so they're bringing that natural give and take to the Schmoedown, which is, you know, that's
wait. I'm thinking of Paul and Tom. My bad. I'm thinking of the wrong team altogether.
They work together. Drew and Tom work together prior
wrong
to
one altogether.
No, I don't. Paul and Tom, I don't think knew each other before the show.
All right.
But
yeah, that's what I was like.
That's, you know, that, like, say with my brother and I think that gave us, we outperformed where we should have. Jonathan and I, when we were the Harris brothers, like we were very inexperienced in the game. He doesn't work in the movie or digital media about movies. Like, he was more coming in from the improv comedy world. I thought he'd be a good partner because we could do funny banter together. I think he's a movie fan, but he's really more of a casual fan that came in, and we managed to take out some pretty, we beat the Odd Couple together.
Yeah.
You know, we ended up in the team tournament finals, and I think that was largely, it was, again, less about we're titans of movie trivia who know everything. And it's more like, well, yeah, we're brothers. So I'm like, dude,
You know
it's
each
this.
other.
Shut up. We've known each other for forever. We know who's right and who's wrong,
Right. Absolutely. That's important. That's more important sometimes than other things. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have to remember with some other teams as well. Obviously, the Shire Wolves, Team Trek, but more importantly, Team Action.
Well,
they used to be.
Upon a time.
Once upon a time. And maybe once again in the future at some point. You never know. I'm still holding out hope for that.
Tables ago.
No. Now, we're going into the betting round, which is definitely one of the riskier rounds of the entire thing. Is that you just don't know what you get. Going into it, I believe that the category is sci-fi fantasy, and
Ridley Scott.
Yes. Oh, Ridley Scott movies. Yes, they're really into Ridley Scott for this one, aren't they? But okay.
Wheel, so it's going to be one of the categories.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. So for this category, did you going into it, were you guys like, we have to put down 3 points in order to try to catch up? Or did you guys try to think yourself, we can try to catch up in a speed round or later? Or do we guys want to play it safe?
I mean, we very quickly settled on 2. I tell you, I don't love the betting round because I am a anxious gambler. Like, I enjoy gambling. But I'm conservative with betting. Like, I'm not the kind of person that's gonna take my whole stack and like easily go all in or like put it all on red. Like, I'm not that kind of gambler. I like to be more like hedge my bets. And so we probably should have gone for more. In retrospect, it would have been nice to go up by a point rather than tying them with 2 each. But that's my inclination. So I think we pretty quickly settled on going to 2. And like in advance, we had very vague discussions about this only. Like, if we're way behind, we'll go 2 or 3, like otherwise we're totally safe. But like only very general. I think we mostly we had a little code worked out. We figured it out in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And hit that Ridley Scott category, which you said before was an interesting category, how deep they can get as well, because that's one of those directors that has stand alone.
This was kind of, to me, this one, and again, it's all subjective, but to me, and no knock on the question writers, it's a great question, but to me, this one felt like a softball. Like Alien is, of the Ridley Scott movies you could ask me about, like, please make it Alien or Blade Runner, I beg of you.
You mean it's not going to be Kingdom of Heaven, the huge costume epic, historical epic?
I mean, look, I like that movie.
It's one of my favorites. I love that. I really like that movie. The director cut. Okay.
Yeah, not the theatrical cut. I could probably do pretty good, but definitely Alien. You could get into the minutia of that one, and I'm probably still going to be able to pull it up. So I don't think any of the 4 of us struggled with this answer at all. Immediately, you picture Tom Skerritt in that little padded all white room talking to Mother.
Right.
So yeah, it jumps immediately to mind, and I was not at all shocked when we came back and they had gotten it as well. Again, as soon as I heard the question, I was like, I wish we'd gone for 3 instead. It's a gimme that everybody's going to get, and I figured if they went for 3, now they're going to pull away even more. But thankfully they didn't. They only went.
But so it is exactly like you said, subjective as well. Because if you had bet 3 and all of a sudden they pulled out the gods of Egypt question, whatever that you don't know anything about, you're like,
oh god, forgot about. Oh wait, no, Gods of Egypt wasn't by Ridley Scott.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, Joel Edgerton, Christian Bale,
right?
not the Jared Butler one.
Story. Exodus got the Kings' 10 Commandments, the Book of Exodus. Gods of Egypt is that crazy Alex Proyas, where the Egyptian gods, and it's Jamie Lannister, and he's 9 feet tall, and Gerard Butler's in there.
He steals his eye. Chadwick Boseman, he plays an Egyptian god.
It's terrible, but like in a way I recommend. Like it's terrible, but entertainingly so.
Right. Yeah.
You kind of know. It's kind of. I feel like that's a whole conversation about like why I'm so because I love The Crow. I think he directed The Crow, right?
Yes.
I love The Crow. Yeah, I love The Crow, and it's very disappointing that because he doesn't direct that many movies, and he's like, actually, I'm going to do this movie, and I'm like,
yeah, he kind of He's kind of become just like a Hollywood sort of, like we'll take Workman, we'll take any yeoman sort of taking a random odd jobs, but.
Yeah.
We still have
we
Crow and Dark City, so.
Yeah, Crow and Dark City are two of my favorite movies of the 90s, I will say. So
that's
Dark
definitely
City is
in the discussion. We are going to be going into the next round, which is we're going to be starting with you guys with the speed round, obviously. And the speed round, obviously, you have, I believe, 10 questions, or is it 5 questions? That you kind of go through and you have to answer or pass. 5? You could answer or pass.
Right.
Yeah, I must say 10 would be a lot for up to 20 potential points.
I'm just trying to come up with the answers.
It's speed round is okay. You have 30 seconds to answer all these questions, to answer it right or wrong, or just pass. And there's no penalty if you thing is, there's no penalty if you pass, but thing is, if you don't answer correctly, that's a point that is removed from your thing. Is that correct?
Yeah,
and so going through this, you're the first person to start. Now, what's going through your mind? I mean, let's face it, speed around it brings a lot of anxiety. So how are you feeling?
Honestly, the hardest thing for me is to pass. Like there's rarely a question. It happens sometimes. In that horror free-for-all, I got the question about what kind of animal is Jody, the imaginary friend from Amityville Horror. And I've seen Amityville Horror, but it's been years. And I just like straight up drew a complete blank. Like it could have been literally any animal. I just had no idea. But that's rare. Usually it's not that I have no idea. It's like, it could be this. Like I've got a vague guess. So I always want to just guess. That's my... That's such my habit, and that's such my instinct, that to pass instead when you don't know, and you'll see it gets me here. Like Unforgiven, I clearly should have passed because I knew it was early 90s, but 91, 92, obviously I guessed wrong, but like it could have probably been 90 to 93, and I just thought that I got it, and I probably should have passed. So that's a case where I was close enough that I wanted to take a go, but I probably should have passed. It's hard for me just on instinct. I just don't. This is the one that really bothers me because immediately I was, it's Sarah Michelle Gellar. But then, but wait, I asked myself, what's Reese Witherspoon's name in that movie? You fucking idiot, smart guy. You think, it's definitely Sarah Michelle Gellar, but I didn't want to just say Sarah Michelle Gellar and then it's Reese Witherspoon. And I probably had like a 70-30. Like I was pretty sure because of the French sounding last name that's Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, the fancy rich girl. But like, I just didn't want to pull the trigger, and I should have swapped it. I should have gone with my guess there and passed on Unforgiven.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I guess your teammate here has a similar moment. He gets the throw mama from the train question, and he almost answers Dan DeVito. Like he goes, pass. And then he lets it get through, and then on the second time around, he's like, no, it's not Dan DeVito, it's Billy Crystal.
My heart was in my throat for that moment, because I loved the train, and I knew that question immediately. And I was like, Paul, do not miss on a throw mama from the train question. My God.
But it was a smart move because he was thinking Dan DeVito.
That's one of the things that Danny DeVito does in that movie all the time is yell the name Larry. Larry! So it's like, of course that's Billy Crystal is Larry. Come on.
But I wonder, that's one of those 90s movies. I think it's 91, right? Maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah,
that
early 90s. It might be late 80s.
That was a miss.
What?
I was thinking that might be a miss from Paul's, because he has those occasional 90s, early 90s
right.
misses.
In fairness, that's a movie from well before his time. Like, it would not at all be surprising. Oh, it's 87.
That last question, though, I don't want to say it irked me. Who plays Maria von Trapp from the most well-known musical of all time?
I mean, look, that
was a stressful question.
I would have gotten it instantly, of course. But
right.
I don't know. First of all, is Singing in the Rain or Sound of Music the most famous musical of all time?
It is. I've actually on an international basis everyone
is arguing iconic musical. You should be able to get to at least Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews, I think.
Well, the thing is, I didn't see Sound of Music until like earlier this year, and I knew it was her. But I also knew it was like in reference to like the whole My Fair Lady situation. But that was a question that
because I've had this discussion many times, like what is Julia Andrews' most defining role? And I'm like Mary Poppins, 100%. And I've had heavy majority of people tell me, no, it's absolutely Maria von Trapp. And so, and I've also heard numerous times how it was like in theaters for like 8 months or something. It made it an obscene amount of money, but
I feel like today it's one of those movies that it's famous for being famous as opposed to necessarily famous because everyone has actually seen it. Like, I think if you were to take a random cross section of Americans and ask them if they've seen Mary Poppins, Wizard of Oz, or Sound of Music's coming in a distant third. Like, I think a lot of people don't even necessarily know what it's about. It's just they know The Hills Are Alive with The Sound of Music, and maybe that gift of,
She's a nanny or something.
Ripping up the Nazi flag. But
children.
I think The Sound of Music is famous. The Von Trapp family singers, as soon as you dig into the weeds, are a lot less famous, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Absolutely. I think it's like you said, it's all incredibly subjective as well. I think it's, I know way too many people that have never seen any of those movies. I hated Wizard of Oz growing up, but I didn't see Wizard of Oz until I was like maybe 15 or 16. And again, I didn't see Sound of Music until early this year, mostly out of spite more than anything.
I didn't see very many musicals until like college and after when I started. Yeah. Like, I like movies in a way that is not just like as a goofy thing that I like, but like I really want to learn about them and study them. It took that because until then I had a real, like, my mom loved musicals and we used to go see them. Like, she just forced me to go see like Phantom of the Opera and stuff with her. But yeah, it took me like getting serious about movies to be like, okay, I'm gonna like put away by like dumb dude, I don't like this stuff, and like dig in and start. And then I discovered that I really liked them, and now I know them pretty well. Like, I would be willing to do the musicals on the wheel if it ever came up. Like, I think I would do pretty well at those.
I think it's a good wheel to take advantage of. It's not exactly. It's like it's you'll know enough, but a lot of people won't have confidence in it as well. So it's a good.
There are a bunch of questions. I've never spun musicals. I don't think I've really ever had very many other than animated musicals. I don't really think I've been asked much about musicals. But I've seen questions come up that challenge other competitors that I know. So I feel like I would do okay. Like, one of them was like, this 50s musical features like some enchanted evening. I was like, South Pacific, you jerk. So
Get out of that.
I'm sure that it was well done. Whoever computed it.
By the way, I can say this: Tooth Fairy is actually obviously Julie Andrews' most iconic film.
She's the voice of the Kraken in Aquaman, you guys. So
she is.
Yes,
I had no idea. That's pretty baller, I have to say.
She declined to appear in Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah,
and then that same time voiced the Kraken in Aquaman, which
what, my dude, priorities. Okay. Yeah. Also, let's face it, like,
middle finger without actually having to say anything negative. Be like, I decline to appear in your sequel, but I will do an afternoon as the sea monster.
but also, who wouldn't want to voice a Kraken? I mean, that's a bucket list thing right there, if I do say so myself. I also want to ask real quickly is that, like I said, I do feel like the speedrun it's definitely one of the more difficult one of the more difficult rounds to prepare for, because again, it's very difficult. You're not told what categories. I feel so bad for Mark Ellis in this moment.
This is when Mark
I was
it's a great conversation about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Splinter. I love it.
It's a horrible theory, and I do not appreciate it, Mark Ellis. I really, really don't. But I do kind of want to ask again, though, Lon. How did you kind of mentally or just prepare, kind of going into the speed run in particular?
It was really just trying to remember to pass. And that was a big thing that Winston was like, that? Look, man, because Winston figured out, like, oh, this guy's not going to pass. Like, Lon's just going to guess on everything. So it was definitely a thing that Paul and Winston both made sure to mention to me, was like, look, man, if you don't know it, don't feel bad. Just pass. Don't try to get them all right. So yeah, I think that was helpful advice, and I was trying to keep that in mind of like, unless you're certain, pass it. Otherwise, like I just happen to know a lot of the questions. Like it just, just luck of the draw. Like I got stuff that I was familiar with and didn't have to make a lot of those kinds of. Those were the only two: the Unforgiven one and the Cruel Intentions one were the only two where real decision making was involved. The rest of them, it was just like, oh, I know this. Here's the answer.
Right.
Like Crazy Heart's a movie I just happened to really like, and I wrote about at the time it came out. So immediately it was like, well, that's the main character. Obviously, it's Jeff Bridges. Like the rest of them were. And actually, it's weird. I get another Jeff Bridges question, and I believe the very next round.
Yes.
And I almost messed it up because I was like, am I just the guy who's going to answer Jeff Bridges? Like, this must be somebody else.
He can totally have his own category. I do think he's a guy that deserves his own category. Him and like Daniel Day-Lewis.
Going back to the to the 70s at least with Jeff Bridges. So yeah, of course he could. But no, that was one where it was like working in a video store. It was like I pictured the Fearless box, and he's on the poster with no shoes on, standing in the air. And I was like, that's the movie. It's the plane crash one, Fearless. Boom. And sure enough, it was.
It's actually the low-key double feature to A Star Is Born, the remake. It's a spiritual double feature, essentially. Crazy Heart, totally.
Yeah, drunk country singer. Yes.
Yeah, drunk country singers, with addiction, with the issues with addiction, unfortunately. So we are going to be going into the final round, the 2, 3, and the 5-pointer. It comes down to this. Now, you guys up until now have stayed pretty steady, obviously, going head to head against The Odd Couple. And it really kind of comes down to these final questions. Now, I know I kind of asked you previously, what was where your headspace at was, and all that good stuff. But you guys must be very proud of yourselves, for getting this far and still having only that 3-point deficit.
You know what? Honestly, pride was not one of the things that was really on my mind here. At this point, now is when I start looking at the score and doing the math in my head. Like, okay, basically when you're down 3 and you're going up against two guys and here, if you look at Andreyko's face, this is where you could see, I think, that it's been a long match. Sort of thought with as well they're doing, he's going to be more ahead than this, kind of getting tired of being pestered with questions. This is where I dig down and be like, all right, but I got to get these 3 right. We got to soldier through. I got to stay in the moment and focus. And that's really what I'm talking about with the intangibles of the match like this. But anyway, so at this point, I'm looking at the score and I'm like, when you're down 3 in a situation like this, we just have to go perfect. Like I've got to hit whether the 2 or 3, Oyama's got to hit his 2 and 3, and then somehow we got to put our heads together and get this 5-pointer. And I mean, I felt pretty good. Like we've done pretty well in final rounds this season, and I feel like I've been getting more 5s than missing, although we've missed a couple painful ones at some points.
Well, looking at the score and everything, honestly, you guys have mentioned there are painful moments and everything, but it didn't occur to me how you guys really kind of line up comparatively to The Odd Couple. I never really thought about it tiers of teams or anything like that, like A, B, C, D kind of tiers of teams. But looking at your records, 5-1, 8-4, looking at the records, I'm like, final exam, superior team. 100%. Now, so I know you said pride is not something that really comes to you when competing, but you must take some pride in being like, you know what, we did okay. So go on,
looking back on it now, sure. I feel like we're a very strong team, and I'm very happy with how I did in this match in particular, but all season. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to be false humble or whatever, but it's just at this point in the match, in my head right here, I'm not like, hell yeah, we're kicking ass. I'm like, oh God, we gotta I have to nail these next 2 questions that I'm asked, and hope that Paul nails the one that he's asked. And of course, starting with scores and soundtrack, thank goodness Paul, and this one I knew, but it's not a category I feel confident in. So when
Right.
that category
Yeah.
comes up, and I'm like, I'm throwing it to Paul because like I don't feel good about that. That's not a great feeling either. You would hope to
Yeah.
come out with something you feel super confident in it. I would have gotten the Lord of the Rings one though. So that would have been embarrassing to fix. But
I've
yeah, right here with the Peter Weir film fearless.
Never heard of
You can
that.
see me for a moment and be like, wait, really? We're doing Jeff Bridges again? But
What I want to know is how many more questions you get when the answer is Jeff Bridges? You just start like defaulting to, well, if I don't know the answer, I'm just going to guess Jeff Bridges at this
Jeff
point.
Bridges is just what I'm going to be asked about today. But
Daniel
yeah,
Day-Lewis.
Raw and you know, thankfully got that one correct. And 90s again, like when you say the category is 90s, that makes me feel more confident because that's probably definitely my strongest decade. Maybe my overall strongest wheel slice, probably between that and directors, I would say for me, where I've done personally the best. And Festival Darlings, maybe now a new contender for the title. So yeah, I mean that was a good feeling. And once we got here, where it's like, okay, well now we're at least putting the pressure on. You know, like
Right.
not only have to get their 2 to tie, but they really have to get their 3 to make this a you know a ball game.
Right.
Otherwise, it's gonna come down to the 5. But you know, like it's like, okay, well now it's back in their corner. They have to start getting more questions.
They have to win it. You're not going to lose it at this
Right.
point.
I mean,
That's
I
the
heard
way
this
in.
question and immediately was like, of course they're gonna get this. Again,
Right.
not
This
a
is-
knock
yeah,
on the
this is-
question. I think looking at these four competitors, any one of the 4 of us, I think, is gonna get Inglorious right there.
Right. Absolutely. I feel it's funny sometimes 2-pointers in the round 3. Like they tend to be closer to like the round 1 type questions.
Yeah,
But
right.
I feel like because you're in the championship round, because you're in that final round, you doubt yourself for a second. You're like, where's the trick here? Where's the trick here?
Well, I mean,
It's not you the trick.
Yeah, we
anytime it's
overthink.
something like that, where it's a director that you know has worked with an actor multiple times.
Right.
You enter that, oh God, am I forgetting? Did it pop up? You know, like you always self-question. Like the one that in my match against Collins, when he spun Tim Burton and he got that question about how many collaborations have Johnny Depp and Tim Burton done together.
That's
That's
a
a
great
question that I
question.
think, I mean, it's a hard question regardless because you got to count.
Right.
There's
Like
a bunch.
50.
But I
Anytime you
think it's an
count.
especially hard question because of that factor. Because even once you get to the answer, you're going to be like, yeah, but am I forgetting? Like, is there a dark shadows that I've overlooked that is just not very good? Whatever. Like, so that makes it even that next level of challenge.
Exactly.
I absolutely agree. I also kind of wish that more questions like that were actually asked. I love questions where they talk about collaborations. It would be like, I was chatting with the faction I trained, and that was actually a category focused on specifically was Matt Damon and Soderbergh collaborations. And so one of the things that I actually had them do, I was like, name as many as you can, and also I want them in order. And so that was like a little exercise we did at the very beginning. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is like, they found out because of the listing that he is actually the most collabed actor that's been with him, because someone argued that maybe Channing Tatum was or George Clooney was. And it just came down to like 15 movies or something.
Yeah, like again, stuff like The Informant that you might not think of right away. You know, like there's a lot of those in there, and like
the Ocean's
Soderbergh
trilogy.
Soderbergh is especially hard because he's done a few massive ensemble films like Full Frontal, where there's like 30 actors in it. You just got to remember, like, wait, is he in that? Is he in 3 scenes of that? But it still would make the list. Like, so that's why those are challenging.
Right.
This one, it's just luck. I mean, I would love to celebrate myself more for knowing Michael Richards there, but it's really just that was an era where I loved comedy. I loved Seinfeld. I saw almost every big movie comedy that came out, and so I saw Trial and Error, a dumb, obscure movie there's no reason for me to know about, but I know about it. You know, and it's like that to me is a perfect example of like that's a really hard question for most people who aren't me, but it's not a hard question for me because those are the kind of movies I saw in 1993. This one also, and again, not to knock these guys, it's a hard question too, but I also knew this one right away because of course Tremors is a movie that I value a lot, and the Gummers are the characters that were the spin-off characters, like that Michael Gross is, you know, those are the characters that are in the sequels, and So like I don't know.
And if you know PJ Campbell's a writer, you want to study your Tremors. He's a very big Tremors fan. So
Huge
but
Tremors fan.
There was a Tremors question I believe that came up that did stump me, which is like I don't remember. It was like, how did the first graboid that's killed get? I don't remember what it was.
Right.
I have been tripped up in the past by a very deep, specific Tremors question. But Heather Gummer, Reba McEntire, immediately, and I knew it, and I knew that they were going to get it too. Like I was not surprised at all to hear Reba McEntire coming from them, because sure, it's a classic. Everybody our age remembers Tremors.
Well, going back to your 5-pointer now, where you got that was one of those, again, you talked about those 90s movies that maybe some people might not get if they're not in that area. But Jeff Daniels, Michael Richards starring with Jeff Daniels in Trial and Error. I actually never saw the movie, but I saw so much of the advertisement for it, the trailers for it. I was around when it came out. It was such a big, well-known film at the time. I don't think anybody these days would know much about it specifically. But for you, it's a 5-pointer. For them, it's a 5-pointer. For you, you knew it right away.
I knew it right away. Like it's also I like Seinfeld in particular. I was like a huge fan, so of course I knew Kramer was. He didn't make that many movies, and also I liked UHF, which was Michael Richards. Like he was also in that movie. So yeah, this was like if you were gonna design a 5-pointer to tailored to me, you could probably not do much better than like focusing on goofy early 90s comedies that starred people I love from television. Like
right, absolutely.
That was right in my strike zone. That question.
Yeah, it's always wonderful. That's a really great feeling when you get a question at important moments, and you're like, oh God, this is the question I wanted. I've been yearning for.
One other time I recall that happened. I think this was early on. This was one of my early matches. I had literally just rewatched Hercules, the Disney cartoon, like a few weeks ago for a work thing. I hadn't seen it in many years. And then the 5-pointer was Danny DeVito's character, Phil from Hercules, is what kind of mythological creature? And if you've seen the movie, he mentions being a satyr like 8 times.
Right.
It's like a dialogue beat that they hit. So it was very easy for me, but like, that's a tough question if you haven't seen Hercules recently.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I kind of wonder about questions where it's like I don't know the name, but I'm like I can draw it. He's like half goat and half person.
Right. Yes. He's
like would that count? Like would that count? Because that like
what if you
if you like that count. If I said I was like half goat, half man. If I gave that answer, that was kind of.
I'm not sure if fawn would have counted, like FAUN. Sometimes those characters are called fawns. Like Mr. Tumnus from Narnia says he's a fawn.
Yeah,
and they look as far as I can tell, satyr and fawn, like they look the same.
Yeah,
I think you would have had to say one of those words though. I don't think half man and half goat would have flown.
Yeah.
Right.
Well. When it comes down to it, you played in your second 5-rounder match. This is your last match of the season. How do you feel about your entire amazing season? From this entire year, being part of SWAG and everything. Kind of looking back on it, how do you feel about how you did?
I feel great. I feel really good about how Final Exam did. We lost twice, and the 2 teams that we lost to are the 2 teams duking it out at the Spectacular for the belt. So, it's hard to feel like that. Basically, as I see it, we're a solid bronze medal for the season. Like Shazam and Odd Couple are duking it out for 1 and 2. Yeah. But if there was a number 1 contender right under them, I think it would be hard to make the case that it's not Final Exam based on, we beat every other major contender team out there, So, well, I guess we didn't face all of them, but for the most part, like corruption or whatever. But like there are other strong teams. I don't mean to go that far, but I think I feel very good about how we played. The games that we dropped, I think, were against amazing teams, and it was always competitive. I don't think I got blown out this season myself, but by the Coyote. So, like, what are you going to do? The guy's an animal. But
he's definitely he's a beast. No pun intended, but
yeah, like a killer. So I can't feel too bad about losing big to that guy. But as Final Exam, I don't think there were no like really blowout losses. It was always close competitive matches against some of
Mhm.
the very best teams doing it right now. And so, yeah, I can't feel bad about losing to Brendan Meyer and William Bibiani and Snyder and Andreyko. They're all amazing. So, yeah, it feels good to compete at that level.
Well, we are going to be wrapping up things here in a few minutes, essentially. Now that we kind of wrapped up everything. Before we kind of dive into that, we're going to be chatting my favorite segment of the entire show, which is Schmoedown Fan Fiction. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Schmoedown Fan Fiction, where that's going to get weird. Okay. All right. So Schmoedown Fan Fiction, if you're not familiar, is that potential storylines we would love to see emerge as a result from this match. The weirder, the better. They're not meant to be realistic. They're meant to be fun and not creepy. I don't want to say creepy. That's a really weird word to describe it. But just it's meant to be like just bring out a lot more of the story aspect of it. Now, Paul, you've never done it before, and Lon, it's been a minute, so obviously you're a little biased in this situation. So I can go ahead and provide my Schmoedown fan fiction first, which is both you and Paul are stolen by an unnamed, not revealed yet, manager of the Droogs as part of their core trio. That's my Schmoedown fan
you have
fiction.
A theory on who would step up and become the new manager of the Droogs? Definitely not going to be Ken. He's
absolutely. I could see Grace potentially being involved. Maybe. I don't think so. But I'm just trying to think of managers. Again, Andrew Guy could 100% be. I know he's only going to be playing in teams next season. But you know what? I could see him being like, no, I want to be both a manager and a team's competitor. Get over it. I could totally picture him doing that. And again, part of the core trio, I could see him drafting both you and Paul as a team as part of his core trio. So that's my Schmoedown fan fiction for you. Food for thought.
Ooh, this is I've never done this before, but we're allowed to get kind of really bizarre, right?
Yeah, make it weird. I'm just totally like, we're just having fun with it.
I'll
Taco's the next manager of the Droogs.
Because I'm going to think along those same lines. I think Taco is going to reveal himself as the next manager in the Schmoedown. He's really the fourth behind the final exam, and they're going to form a new faction with Taco as the head, and he's going to be so intimidating that no one will ever go against them in a heartbeat. I think that's the new right there. That's our new faction, the Taco Nation, or something like that. Work it out. We'll get the shirts ready.
I will tell you, just if, not based maybe on this match, but just me personally. After watching the Queen's Gambit, I was thinking a fun faction for next season would be like the Soviet Schmoedown team, where we're all like very serious and studious and like in suits, and it's like the Rocky Four, like that would be a truly heel team. Would be like, oh no, did you hear the Soviet Schmoedown team? They've been studying scores and soundtracks. Like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to beat Spassky. And like,
you can also make a reference that you also stole Pee-wee's bike, from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
But also, I mean, if we started you draft people from other factions and then bring them in, and they have to become like
correct
the Soviet
them
version, right? Exactly. Like, I think you could do a lot with that, and the entrance music writes itself. I mean, we know it's that.
Totally.
Like that organ heavy.
It would just be it would just be like a Star Wars theme or something.
Yeah,
probably.
Right, exactly. It's just like very
it would be like
War,
a reference to Darth Vader.
I think that would be a lot of fun.
And
just all of our no more nicknames.
Paul wants
no
to be
more
on that
colorful nicknames, just Russian sounding names for our nicknames.
Yes, I can totally see that. Okay, so Paul is having Taco run the faction. I'm having some unnamed manager drafting the final exam as their poor trio in the first round. I think that's gonna happen. That's my fan fiction. And Lon, we're gonna get a Soviet specific faction coming next season. I'm here for it. I want all of this. Okay, right before we kind of wrap it up, Lon, like I said, you're done for the season. You have no more Schmoedown matches. So I want to hear from you.
as a little pitch to other Schmoedown managers or whatever the situation is, tell us why you should be drafted to whatever faction.
Wait, what have you heard? What have you heard?
No. I'm saying I asked this for anyone that comes on. I asked this for any faction. No, I mean like specifically what, like in 30 seconds, like, because we obviously know that Winston wants to keep you. He definitely should keep you. But every manager is going to be fighting for some Lon love. Let's face it.
I think it's going to be about, I really am looking for a faction. I think that the place for me is going to be a place where it's a vibe that's going to suit the character, that's going to suit my approach. So I think that's important. Like, I don't necessarily know that I would be a great pick for a team like Corruption. No knock on the wonderful players or Shannon or any of those people. They're all fantastic. I just feel like the vibe that they give off as a team is not the vibe I give off. So and not that it wouldn't work, but I would have to like rethink from a character perspective, like what's the Lon who's competing on Corruption like. Whereas I think that there are other factions you could think of where it would be like an easier transition for me. And like Swag is like perfect. Who knows? But they're out there. But I don't necessarily want to say. But I think Swag has worked really well in terms of Winston and his sort of approach to managing and his sort of personality and the team final exam and me. It all really worked well. And I think I would want to find another situation like that where it was compatible in that way. So I think it's more of that than like a pitch, because honestly, the delinquent doesn't pitch. You guys.
That's incredibly on brand, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, no pitching here. Off brand, Christian would be like, Lon, what the heck are you doing? That's totally not the delinquent. I can totally picture being like, don't do it, don't pitch. All right, well, let's kind of go around. We kind of broke down one of the best matches of the year.
Let's see something in the chat. I do see something in the chat. It's just intriguing to me. And it's a trivia question that we all have now. In his roles as writer, director, and producer, or executive producer, George Lucas has collaborated with Harrison Ford several times. How many?
I don't like that. No, we can't include executive producer. We can't include that title.
I think we can. Well, it's his question. I mean,
that's his question. But I mean, like, because executive producer, that title changes all the time, and some people executive produce films they're not even directly a part of. They do it just for the name, even though they're not actually in it. Part of it
would require a proviso of: are we including movies that include momentary flashbacks featuring Mr. Ford, or only films in which he's giving original performances? Because I believe at one point Kylo Ren recalls an incident with his father, but Harrison Ford did not actually appear and shoot new footage for that movie. So are we including that movie or not?
Well, definitely when Kylo Ren was involved, Lucas wasn't involved except for as creator, so I don't think he had any.
But if executive producer, I believe he's still an executive producer on those films, is he not?
I don't believe he is. I think he sold it and walked away.
I don't know. That's the question. I don't know the answer to it.
My guess would be 9. My guess is 9. I'm going to go the 3 Star Wars films, the 4 Indiana Jones films, and the 2 American Graffiti films. And that's where the executive producer comes in. I think George executive produced more American Graffiti. That's my
guess. 2 American Graffiti films?
There's American Graffiti and there's more American Graffiti.
There is more American Graffiti.
So, well, if you have an answer, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious, but either way.
7 movies, 4 for Indy, and 3 for Star Wars. That's it.
I guess he's not an
no, that's what Dean said. That's not the final answer. I know
that's not it?
I know
my
American
bad.
Graffiti. He was definitely an American Graffiti, the original. I don't know if he was in the...
That's why I was like, wait, I know he was American Graffiti. But anyway, okay. So, I mean, please let us know. Yes, Harrison Ford did shoot new footage for 9, but George Lucas was not executive producer for it. So, good to know. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really, really do appreciate it. And for hanging out with us for this call to breakdown. And thank you so much to our awesome guest, Lon Harris. Where can we find you? Your awesome face. Any love towards Taco? Potential future manager of Soviet faction.
I don't know if he'd be a good manager. He barely pays attention as is. He's been checked out.
It doesn't. That wasn't the question, though. If he's a good manager.
Find me on Twitter at LONS. That's the best place to keep up with what I'm doing. And so I have a podcast called Binge Boys with Hal Rudnick. Look for that wherever you find your podcast, Stitcher, iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
We just talk about whatever we're watching on streaming services that week.
Yes. The Binge Boys is pretty awesome. I actually I listened to a handful of episodes not too long ago where you guys actually were talking about, I think it was a Queen's Gambit, honestly, recently on an episode.
Oh, we might have been.
Yeah,
We talked
I think
about
so.
that.
Yeah, I remember like a segment where you guys were talking about it.
The thing that's fun about a weekly podcast, like I also do a newsletter about streaming TV and I review stuff like when it comes out, like I try to hit it early and that's it. But a podcast, you could be like, once you finish something, you could be like, and another thing about that, like I can go back, which I haven't been able to do before, which is nice. Like when I have thoughts about a season finale, now I've got a place to yell about them.
Makes sense.
Or maybe it was Animaniacs. I'm not entirely sure. All right, so thank you so much. I also, all the links and all that good stuff, just want to give you a heads up. It's in the description box below. So if you didn't get a chance to like scribble down at Lon's or whatever it might be, it's in the description box, and so you can just click away and then make it a million times easier for you. And over to Paul, you weenie.
It's me. I got a lot of stuff we can promote. We got later on tonight actually Call Live, our Call to Action, our live panel with Kelsey is Kelsey runs that show. Me and Al's going to be on talking about all sorts of Schmoedown stuff as well. And beyond that, we do have. I'll play the ad since we have it up here. Ready?
Where'd you go? Tom? Tommy? I've got fingernails from a dead guy.
That's right. Chill to Action tomorrow with Danny and me. We're going to be interviewing Tom, so it should be a fun experience as well. Thank you, Robert Adams, for that very much the promo we just saw. Hello, Drew.
All right, yes, indeed. Where is Tom? Let's get that hashtag going. All right, guys, you can also find me on Twitter at @real_AlexMac, again in the description box. You can also find me hosting Schmoebates every Wednesday except the next few Wednesdays. There's a lot going on in my life right now, so Schmoebates is a little bit on hiatus right now until I get things a little bit settled. But I usually do that as my Schmoedown themed debate show here at C2A. Also, just want to give you a heads up. We're going to be covering a bunch of really cool stuff over at Cinema Bias that I co-host with Video Drew herself. We're going to be covering the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles here this Tuesday. So I'm super psyched. And also, we have a potential guest on that one. Maybe. And also the week following, we're gonna be diving into National Lampoon's Christmas Story, the movie. Vacation, that one, whatever. It's horrible.
The Griswold take a Christmas vacation.
Regardless, it's a horrible movie. I don't want it. Yeah, but yeah, Cinema Bias. That's my bias. That's my big bias against the movie. Guys, thank you so much.
Real quick,
I hate it.
Got two more things
hate
I
that
forgot
movie
to
so
promo.
much. I can't put into words.
Two more things I
sorry.
just want to push real quick. I'm going to slip over to a different Schmoedown for a second. Tomorrow on Action Industries, my class action show with Richard Eric Jarvie, we are putting up Ben Affleck versus Matt Damon to decide who is the winner. A battle to the death in 5 custom-made categories. And finally, next Friday, Matt Damon, you'll have to say. You have to tune in to find out.
That's fine, but it's Matt Damon. Come on.
Well, and next Friday, I want to point out, because of Robert Adams, we talked about that. For the we're doing a preview of the Schmoedown Spectacular. We're going to be doing a crossover channel, multiple channels. The Let's Get Ready to Talk Schmoedown, Certain Point of View, the Cinefanatics, and C2A members of all the parties are going to be joining each other's on the Smashathon channel. That's where we're going to go, the Smashathon channel, and we're going to be talking all about the spectacular that's happening the very next day. Any stream lab you do, we'll send to the Kevin Smets GoFundMe as well. So make sure you tune in for that as well. Timing to be determined at this point, but Friday night at some point. So that's it, Alex. You can take it away.
That's it, honestly, guys. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Just want to let you know, please subscribe and like this video. That'd be much appreciated. And also, we're available anywhere podcasts are found, including Spotify and Stitcher and Apple and Anchor. A whole bunch of awesome places. So please go do that, subscribe, and check it out. All right, guys. But thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening and wear a mask and keep watching movies. Bye.